So we hear the cry of our country. The cost of living, the depreciation of the Kenyan shilling against the dollar, which is affecting the prices of most of the commodities because we are net importers. When I hear of that cry, it is very sad. I hear of a ruling class that doesn't seem to care about the depressing situations of this country. We have a weak parliament that can be used by the executive to add taxes to Kenyans. When this government was campaigning, they said they are going to reduce taxes. In fact, they were criticizing the then government, which they were part of, because of the high taxation. But today, the load of taxation is becoming heavier and heavier. And this is happening at a time when we hear of cases of grand corruption. So on one hand, you tax people. On the other one, the same government gets into scandals of corruption. For example, the edible oil. What has the government to do with edible oil? Any government project is riddled in a lot of corruption, unfortunately. And then you are told it is not fit for human consumption. Fuel prices are not making sense in Kenya. If you compare with the world, the prices are going down. In Kenya, they are going higher, affecting the lives of the poor Kenyans. Most of the public resources are going into waste, unfortunately. And the controller of budget actually stated publicly, and this is information that you have, that 2.2 billion has been spent in the office of the president and State House between July and September. If you do that calculation, it means that we spend in that office 23 million per day and 1 million per hour. That cannot be sustainable. While I was away, I hear now you've moved from Kenya Power and Lightning to Kenya Power and Darkness. And I even hear now you want to spend billions of shillings to unbundle the power lines. This is corruption after corruption after corruption in a government that looked very Christian. And you remember I told them not to hide in Christianity. Christianity is being men and women of integrity. You cannot use Christ to come to power, and then when you get there, you become a corrupt leader. The context in Kenya is becoming even sadder with the weakening of the opposition. While we should be having a very strong opposition by this time to check on the government, it's becoming weaker and weaker, and we can't hear the voice of parliament, but also the schemes that you see to silence people. The other day I was reading of somebody threatening Kenyans not to go to court. Kenyans have the right to go to court. And leaders should, political leaders, I wish they were hearing me, should never threaten Kenyans. They are there because we voted. And they are there as servants, not as bosses. No threats. What even saddens me now is when I hear the voice of the church being silenced. Unfortunately, the church seems to be in bed with the government. They can't challenge the government. They have become recipients of government appointments and recognitions. And that is dangerous. So corruption, if you're not careful, will permeate every part of the church. This cathedral has been known as a place of agitation. This pulpit has been used by many people in the past, archbishops and provosts, as a place of calling on the government. And that is the role that the church must engage. And this church is very central to that. The people of Israel needed a redeemer. Kenya need redemption as well. And this is so appropriate as we come to Christmas to think about redemption, because it's a biblical theme that is important even in our current context. Now, redemption implies that something has been paid or bought back. Like a slave who has been set free through a payment of a ransom. A ransom is a practice of holding a prisoner or an item to extort money or property to secure their release. It is the sum of money that is involved in such a practice. And it could be monetary, it could be avenging for the atrocities a community has received. It could be a kinsman's redemption, like you see in the book of Ruth, about Ruth and Naomi, and how Boaz comes to redeem that family as a kinsman's redeemer. But also, you see redemption in terms of spirituality. One of the biggest themes and story in the Bible is about the redemption of the children of Israel from the shackles of slavery in Egypt. And so you can see redemption is a strong movement. In the liberation movement, even in reggae music, redemption is a strong theme. You're wondering, does the former provost listen to reggae? I love reggae, because reggae talks about the very things that affect people. I listen to reggae. I love the themes within reggae, because it's about setting free of people, and it's a strong biblical concept. Isaiah 53 is a vivid image of the ultimate suffering Messiah, our Savior Jesus Christ. In his sacrificial love, we see the very heart of God. And through his suffering, the witness is beautifully displayed by Isaiah. Unfortunately, Isaiah doesn't use powerful words. He uses words that makes you think that the Savior was a weak person. When you get home, you could look at Isaiah 53 more. But I want to underline a few words. Number one, he grew up before him like a tender shoot. In other words, it's not a strong shoot. It's not the main shoot. It is actually the side shoot. And then it says that he had no beauty or majesty. The Israelites are expecting majesty, but Isaiah is telling them, you don't expect that kind of a savior. Then he says that nothing in his appearance that we should desire of him. He was despised. Look at the words. Despised and rejected. Suffering, familiar with pain. And people had to hide their faces not to see the Savior. He was despised and he was held in low esteem. Now, that may make you wonder, is Christianity then a weak religion? No, and I will demonstrate that shortly. What I see in our two readings today is Isaiah, on one hand, demonstrates a servant leader. But Titus will be demonstrating that it is us who now make Christ look good. And I want to do that when I come to the end. So the chapter is not only offering to, is not only referred in the book of Acts, but it's also found in the four Gospels. It is referred in Romans, in Hebrews, in 1 Peter, and it is a central part of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The suffering servant is unique. The idea that someone would be willingly dying for those who are sinful is a strong, strong theme that is important for us to understand. And so, it all points to the humble beginnings of Jesus. But what is ahead of us? Jesus Christ is coming back as King and Judge. Don't look at Christ as a weakling. He's only a servant, but he's also a king. Now, let me spend some little time to try and help you understand this in application. Nowadays, many churches don't like preaching about Isaiah 53 because it's a weak way of presenting Christ. And modern Christianity doesn't like the idea of the suffering servant. We want to have glory without the cross. We want to have the trophy without participating in the race. And we want the profit before the investment. Many churches now want to make people feel good as they leave their congregations. They don't challenge them in matters of sin and integrity. Yesterday I listened to a video that you may find it later. And this is the former Chief Justice Maraga. He's speaking in his church, and he's talking about the young people being champions of integrity. Champions of integrity. And so he gets into a place and he asks, what is your prize? What is your prize? Could you ask your neighbor, what is your prize? You know, you have to obey the priest here. Ask your neighbor, what is your prize? And he was asking this because he was giving a story in Mombasa when he was the judge, and there was a corrupt importation, and he gave an order restraining that. And those who were doing that went to his friend who was a lawyer to try and circumvent the process. And the lawyer said, hey, I can't go to Justice Maraga. That guy has no price. That guy has no price. Then the corrupt team said, no, everybody in Kenya has a prize. Then the lawyer said, sorry, for Justice Maraga, no prize. Now, let me ask you, can somebody give a testimony about you? Can somebody say, oh, that guy you're sending me to has no prize? In other words, you can't buy him. Let me ask you today, and I'm not asking this because the police are here, but I'm asking this to even individual Christians. What is your prize? Can you be easily corrupted? When we were doing that building, a politician came to see me and said, hey, Provost, I want to go see what you've been doing here. This looks great. And asked me, how much have you spent by now? And we were almost coming to the end of that building. I said, 700 million. You know what she said? If it was a government project, by now we will have spent 10 billion and it will still be in the foundations. As your provost then, I used to tell you, I'll never allow corruption here. So I wasn't just challenging the government. I was challenging myself as a believer, as a minister of the gospel, but also as a leader, because you can't challenge others when you can't challenge yourself. Let me ask you, do you make Christ attractive? Look, in Isaiah, he doesn't look attractive. In Titus is being told by Paul, make Christ attractive. Now, if you are still in good mood, could you tell your neighbor, make Christ attractive? Tell the other one, make Christ attractive. It is us to set the example. And actually the word that Paul is telling Timothy is, in everything, set them an example by doing what is good. So Christians do good. Christians represent Christ. Christians say no to what can corrupt them easily. And so this passage, although it is directed to Titus as a young man, it can apply to every believer. We set examples whether we want it or not. And in Kenya, the word integrity is used loosely. But integrity is a beautiful biblical word. And one person by the name David Holwick said this, and I'm quoting him, that the word integrity is curious. You will hear dozens of different applications of the word, but they all boil down to one succinct thought, that a person's integrity is one that is established